Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggett. I'm the founder of Car Dealer magazine, and today I'm chatting to Derren Martin, who's director of valuations for CAP HPI. Derren, hello. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks.
Merry Christmas to you and the team. Thank you for all your help and advice this year. Let's get straight into it then. We're going to talk about December pricing and also a little look towards 2024. But let's talk about what's happened in the market in December for used car prices.
Yeah, so December we've cut off now. Obviously, we cut off early in December because of the Christmas period. We publish our monthly values next week. It's been another month of drops, but not as bad as previous, which is good. We're seeing it as a bit of a stabilisation. Values have come down on average 2.1%, which is about £375 on average. That's at the 3-year point, 1.8% at the 1-year point, and quite reassuring at the older stuff, 1.4% at 10 years old. So that's only about £75. So it's definitely a stabilisation. We've obviously had a couple of very tricky months where the values were dropping by more than we expected them to. Over the 3-month period, it is a 10.5% drop. So it is quite considerable, but we're definitely seeing it as a sort of a little bit of a calming down and a bit of a stabilisation in December.
Yeah, so as you say, we've had some big drops, haven't we, over the last couple of months? October 4.2%, November 4.2%. I think I've just read in your editorial this drop in December is one of the strongest you've ever seen. Am I right?
Yeah, it is. We had a 2.2% drop. I think it was 2014, something like that. But apart from that, it tends to be a month where values do drop, but not by as much as that. So yeah, it's still a reasonable drop, but I'm looking at it more on the positive that it's less than it has been over the last 2 months rather than in comparison to other years, because it's very difficult to compare to other years based on what's been happening with those values going up in 2021 has just kind of skewed everything really with regards to sort of normality. So with this drop, and we'll talk about next year soon, but yeah, obviously we are seeing this as a stabilisation, and we do think there's going to be now a gradual improvement. Values now look more reasonable. They're still above where they were prior to those 2021 increases on average by about sort of 13%. But yeah, they're still ahead of there, but they are now looking at, I mean, there's some good deals to be had now.
I was out on a car auction this week, and most of the stuff there was making cap clean at least. It was a slightly older stuff, but there was a lot of buyers in the room actually buying again. I've spoken to a lot of dealers over the last few weeks, and they said that they've washed through that stock. They've taken the pain early, and they're actually quite a few of them, and they've started buying again. Now, we had a lot of dealers on buying bans, didn't we, in sort of October, November time. Are you seeing now that activity pick up again and people out there buying cars?
Yeah, definitely, because I've not spoken to a single dealer that isn't optimistic about January. On Boxing Day, really, consumers start to look for vehicles. So yeah, and to take advantage of that, you've obviously got to buy cars in early December to get them prepped, get them ready, get them on your site. So yeah, we've definitely seen dealers that are dipping back in. No one's going mad. No one's overstocking like has happened in previous years. In previous years, you'd have dealers that were stocking up for sort of January sales and really going for it, but there's still a degree of sort of I guess pragmatism at the moment, just being a little bit careful, and they're picking off the good cars, making sure they have got some. Obviously now with it all going online, even sort of the physical auctions you can buy online as well, and you can buy again. I've seen various sites that are posting Christmas weeks and saying we're open again on the 27th, fully open, come and buy some cars. So you can buy then. So if it does pick up, then they've got the opportunity to buy fairly quickly then. So yeah, I think it's good news really from the dealer point of view. They're seeing it more as a normal December, whereas October and November we were saying things like Christmas has come early and that's not a good thing for the car retail world. December has definitely been more of a return to normality. Consumer demand's been okay, actually. It's been like a normal December. The dealers, there's different dealers doing different things. Some are trying to stimulate demand by reducing their prices, and that has worked. There are others that haven't necessarily reduced their prices, and they've been pleasantly surprised again that there is still a bit of demand out there. So the necessity purchase has obviously remained, and we do think that from as soon as we head after Christmas, there will be people looking for cars again.
I'd like to come on to that, the correlation between the retail prices and the trade ones in a moment. But firstly, I'd like to ask you that question of what do you think is going to happen to used car prices in 2024? It's the thing that I keep on getting asked, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, everyone was talking about, is there going to be a January bounce? And then now it's a bit like, well, what happens further forward? So we're predicting. So we think there will be plenty of volume around still in January, which will temper any sort of positivity and value movements. So although the consumer will be out and there will be, I think the retailers will be busy, which is really good. If conversion rates at the moment are around sort of 50, 60%, maybe slightly higher than that now, that's a lot of cars that aren't selling that are still going to be swilling around in the market in January. We're also seeing OEM activity. There's the ZEV mandate next year, so they are keen to register cars this year, particularly petrol, diesel, and some hybrids. If we've seen some pre-reg, we've seen some good keen consumer deals. They'll also be sending cars to the fleets and probably the rental companies, which will lead to cars being swapped and coming into the used market in January. So for that reason, we think that values will continue to drop, but not by as much. So when we talk about that stabilisation, a gradual stabilisation. So if it was 4.2 last month, 2.1 this month, maybe 1.5 in January, and then slowly improving as we head through. Obviously, there's lots of unknowns at the moment. So interest rates, all of the sort of those sorts of things. People are still going to have their fixed rate mortgages coming to an end. There's still going to be cost of living worries, but we do think it will gradually improve. It's 2.5 million less cars than there would have been if there hadn't been for semiconductors, COVID, all of those sorts of things that were thrown at us, obviously all caused by the pandemic. So as we move through next year, we think that values will continue to drop. Might be a bit of a tricky first half of values that continue to see some small drops. But as we get through that, second half of next year, we're kind of calling it a game of two halves. And we think that next year, the back end of next year, or second half of next year, could be stronger. And you might start to see some values actually going back up again then. There'll be less cars around the market, less volatility, and a more positive situation, hopefully for the whole country and certainly for used cars. But time will tell, but that's what we're seeing. But we are seeing it as a relatively positive year for 2024.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there. I think especially what we're seeing with inflation in November dropping considerably, and I think once interest rates start to come down, and maybe towards the back end of next year, there's going to be a lot more strength in the market, I'm sure. Any particular areas of strength in the market right now, Derren? I mean, what is holding up the best?
It's really the older stuff or the cheaper stuff. That cheaper end, especially if it's in good condition, that's still making all the money. So that's really the strongest part. Once you start getting more expensive to that aspirational purchase rather than the necessity purchase, that's when it's a bit more of a struggle. So there's not a lot that we've put up in value this month. But yeah, that cheaper end, as I say, it's only come down by sort of £75 on average. So yeah, that's anything sort of below 5 or 6k has been doing all right. Once you start getting above 15 to 20k, that's where there's more of a challenge.
And yeah, we certainly saw that in the auction this week. I mean, there was a lot of people buying that older stock for sure. Auto Trader told us earlier this week in a separate video that dealers are cutting their prices too much when it comes to retail prices. What do you think to that point?
It's an interesting one. I listened to the interview. They've obviously been fairly vocal about the sort of the retail down approach to pricing. I guess what I would say is that dealers have to make their own decisions. If they've got cars that they're advertising high and they're not selling them, what do? They're the ones holding the stock. So it is difficult at the moment when trade has been coming down very, 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 very sharply over the last 3 months. Retail hasn't. But you have to remember that those retail values on websites, they're aspirational. They're not necessarily what cars are selling for. So you have to look at your days in stock. We've spoken to a lot of dealers, some that have taken a real amount of pain to sell those cars, but those cars have been in stock for maybe 90 days. They were bought at previous prices. You can buy them a lot cheaper. There's a sort of an argument that dealers have to buy their way out of this when they've got cars that are too expensive or that they're not selling. So I understand what they're saying, but I think it's down to the dealers to use all of the tools that are available for them really to decide what they're going to do with their prices. And we've seen a bit of a mixed bag. There's definitely the opportunity though to try and hold a little bit on price with January around the corner, and because if consumer demand does pick up, then maybe you don't need to reduce them before that. So Christmas coming will help with that. You get that out of the way, and if you can hold on price, but if you need to move cars on, then obviously you've got to take some action on them. So dealers should use everything they've got really, all the trade data, the retail tools that they've got, and their own experience and knowledge, because they're the best ones to know what to do.
Certainly the ones I've been talking to in the trade. I spent 2 days with a used car dealer in Derby this week, and they've cut prices. They cut prices in October, November, and actually, as a result, they've had a pretty good December so far. So they sort of, these dealers do have to make their own decisions, don't they? Derren, what's happening when it comes to the specific fuel types? Can we just talk a little bit about how EV are doing first?
Yeah, so EVs have dropped, but only slightly more than the average. It's really difficult with EVs because you've got some cars that are actually holding firm and are doing okay. The Leaf vehicles like that, they've actually, I mean, they've dropped by a lot over. If you look over the last sort of year or so, they're the ones that have dropped the most, but they've now stabilised. It's the more expensive end that there's a little bit of pain, where there's more volume coming back in now. The aspirational sort of EV purchase has probably been put on hold to a certain degree. Tesla Model 3 has kind of done all right. That's the one we always talk about. That's obviously been fairly volatile, and we've seen loads more volume this year than we've ever seen before, but that's holding up okay now, dropping by sort of less than the average. Model Y has actually stayed level as well, which so Model 3 came down slightly. Model Y has done all right. I think watch this space on Model Y, because I think there's plenty more volume to come there. So EVs quite mixed, as they have been for a while. We can't talk about it as an overall fuel type anymore. It's lots of moving parts there. Next year is going to be fascinating with the ZEV mandate, seeing what manufacturers do there. It's a real tricky challenge for manufacturers there, and I imagine that the fleets and rental companies are going to be quite popular if they can cater for that. Hybrids, we've seen a little bit of a drop in plug-in hybrids, and some of our biggest movers this month have been plug-in hybrids, and maybe they just look a little bit expensive now compared to some of those EVs that have dropped by as much, and some of the petrol and diesel cars as well. So and there's plenty of volume of certain cars there as well. So yeah, a little bit of volatility in the hybrid area more than anything else now.
I find there's a bit of nervousness with the dealers I talk to when it comes to buying used hybrids, especially because they're just worried about the range that it's going to have left in it when it comes to the used market. What about petrol and diesel, Derren? I mean, what's happening with those two?
I guess that's where most of the volume is, so they tend to drive that average figure anyway, but they've both behaved in line with the market. There's nothing really untoward, no anti-diesel feeling. Obviously, the volumes of diesels are a lot lower than they've ever been. In the new car market, they're what, 6 or 7% now, whereas it used to be 50% diesel, so hugely down, and they've been behaving fine. So there's nothing really untoward there. It's all down to the sort of the detail of specific models rather than any sort of particular fuel issues with petrol and diesel.
So overall, a steadying picture. So not a particularly great December, but probably getting better in January and improving as the year goes on. For those people watching this video that might be consumers and not actually in the trade, when do they buy their next car?
Now.
Now.
Do your homework, have a look around. We were on Radio 4 a couple of weeks ago, and they sort of asked us the same thing, and Umesh and I were sort of stressing it's a good time to buy. Don't wait for prices to come down anymore, because they might not, and there could be there could be dealers, as I say, holding firm in January on prices, or even trying to push the retail prices up a bit, especially if they've if they're sort of holding on to or if they're buying fresh stock in, they might see an opportunity there. So I think it's a good time to buy, and abandon your family on Boxing Day and get online and buy a car.
Derren, fantastic advice as always. Thank you once again for all your help this year and for your advice, and Merry Christmas to you and the team.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you, and thanks.
Thank you. So that's Derren Martin from Cap HBI. For more videos like this one, subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified when they next come out. And for the latest on used car prices, log on to our website. It's cardealermagazine.co.uk, and there's a used car tab at the top of the page. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.